Okay, so we have a really lovely Canadian landscape here, and I thought it'd be really nice to explore all of these fabulous colours, which are very, very, very cool. Got lots of different blues on this one, and if you've gone for, one of the choices where it's kind of snowy and white, then there's some lovely colours on those ones too. I'm going to try and get those to hand here. So there are, these ones are cool. That one's obviously very warm because I've got all the autumnal colours out, but these are quite light. But even then, when we're looking at kind of snowy areas and rocky kind of snow-topped capped or topped areas, we kind of really can really start to look at what is actually white and what isn't, because when we start to really unpick it, we'll find that quite a lot of it actually isn't white at all, and we've got all these amazing tones in there. I thought this one particularly was a great one to explore. So starting out, if you want to kind of sketch that out, then we can do that. Just grab my pencil because I've popped it away. Yeah. Okay, so I've got a pencil. I use that. I'm going to use a flat brush to kind of get all this lovely sky in, and actually it's great for the rock face and things like that. I'm going to use a round brush and like a smaller one for the detail as well. So we can just kind of work on that. So that's a really much thin one. Now you don't need to go as small as me, only if you're working in half A4, A5. Mine is a really small board. So all I'm going to do then, I've also got a palette knife to just do a little bit of exploring with that as well, and how we can get some textures in the rocks, in the rock face. So, if you feel comfortable enough just to sketch it out, that's absolutely fine. You go for it. If you feel like you want to just have a little bit more help with that, then by all means, just use your pencil. So I'm just, that's showing up very well actually. I'm just drawing on a bit darker line. That's better. So, you can translate that to your page if you want, but do it really lightly if you are, because it can scrub up. So we're using quite a lot of light colours, so you want to make sure it's nice and light to do that. And then you can just take each piece in isolation. I'll just make that centre part a bit darker so you can see that. I'm painting on a little board, but you can paint on the acrylic paper if you in that way. There we go. So I'm just going to take each little area in isolation. I'm going to take this rocky, get the kind of rocks in here. This rock face comes all the way down, doesn't it, across, and then there's a little bit of a kind of a bit that comes out where the tree line is there. So I'm just going to follow that line down, follow the rock face down. And this, by the way, doesn't matter if we don't get this really correct the first time. As we've said before with acrylics, we can just kind of we can just kind of move the paint around or change the direction and everything, so it's fine. This comes down just a little bit there. Then we've got another rocky mountain there, kind of coming up. We can explore having a go with changing these as well if we want to. That one's covered in a little bit of very misty, almost a bit of steam there. I mean, a bit of fog and snowy down there as well. And then from that we can see, this is quite helpful because it just sees where that centre line is. We can get that in. You can do this with anything pretty much. And then just making my way across with all of them really. I'm going to pop in just this little bank of trees up here to just so we know whereabouts that starts. Follow that down, it comes kind of just out here, and then that will help with getting the mountains behind as well. And then there's just another little bit of tree line there that comes out as well at the bottom. And then we've got some other kind of snow-capped areas here at the bottom, a bit jagged. We've got another mountain coming out here. Just beautiful, isn't it? Ooh, gorgeous. And this one there. And down below, and there's a bit of cloud coming over the top of that one as well, isn't there? You can just see that bit down below here. So that's kind of enough, really. We don't need to do much more with the rocks because we'll put the texture and things in. I am going to just do this little bank at the side here that comes up into this area. So we've got a little bank of trees there as well. So I'll pop in there. That comes all the way down there. We have another one here. So it's kind of like scree, you know, we have a lot of like, it's quite slaty where we are, aren't it? So I don't think it's the same kind of rock, but lots of kind of little tiny bits of almost like slate. I'm not sure exactly what that would be. That's one of my Connect friends that lives in Canada. There we go. So I'll pop that in there. Well, what I'm doing now is I'm just kind of just doing a general idea of where this bank of trees is going. You don't have to do that, by the way, at all. And then I'm going to have a little look at some of where the edge of this comes out to here. It's kind of in this top section of this water, so that makes it a bit easier to follow there. And then we have a few kind of little areas that kind of jut out into the water there. Can't quite tell what's going on behind the trees, which is fine. So I'm going to put it where we think we can see it. And then I'm going to continue with this. There's kind of two areas to this. This is the first bank of trees, and then this one in front of it was underneath the lines, isn't it? Underneath this quarter and round. And behind the tree, which is great. So this will change an awful lot when we do it. So I'm just going to put make a clearer outline of where that water's edge is going to be. And then I'm not putting the trees on at all because the trees will go on last, because with an acrylic drawing, obviously painting, anything that's in the foreground will be painted in over the top last. So I'm just going to go in here. Some rocky areas at the front, just get those in. And just make that not stick out too quite as much. And that kind of comes all the way down. It's quite handy to do this if you just gives us a good idea of where everything's going, and then kind of following this round. Oops, a bit higher, but it comes round there, doesn't it? There's a tree juts out across there, which we'll do later. There we go. So I am going to take my line out now, just so that it doesn't distract from my actual painting. Make sure that if you do anything like that, you just rub it really carefully so it doesn't take the surface off, and also make sure there's no bits left on there, because they can get stuck in your paint, which is not nice, not the best experience sometimes. It makes it a bit, unless you want to add for texture, and then it would work. So let's have a look. So we're looking at the two kind of different sections. What we've got here, if we start to kind of really unpick the painting as well, or the photograph, sorry, first, before we paint our painting. What we're looking at here are these really, really high mountains, and we've got the lit sky, the brighter sky coming behind, and just the sun is getting to the top of these two mountains over here. But those mountains are actually blocking out the sun on this side. So everything from here is really shady, isn't it? Except for when we've got these reflection of the brightness being cast in the water, and that's more over here. It's a bit brighter. Even that tree is brighter than this one over here. So we've got a few tiny little areas there as well, but it's just everything's blocking it out at the moment, and that makes real sense to us when we're doing a painting, because we can then understand that to start with, like this whole area here is all in the shadow. It's going to be kind of much less warm and cool and dark than say this area here, which has got these quite bright capped areas at the top there. So when we're looking at the mountains and things like that, we're just looking at what kind of tones are in the bit that's unlit, as opposed to the tones which are in the bit that's lit. And you'll see, if you start to look across, we've got kind of blues, greys, browns. You know, you may see some pinky tones in there as well. Whereas over here, we may even go as far as to say we've got some like yellow areas, some much more kind of brighter pinky bits in there. So you might even want to put some violets or lilacs in this side. So there's a lot to kind of go on with just the top. So I'm going to start in with the sky, because that goes behind, and then build the layers on the front. Then I'm going to go in with the base tones. I'm going to pick a base tone for the rock faces, and then I'm going to work over the top into it. Now you can work into it with a brush, or you can work into it a little bit with a palette knife. What I will say is that everything it will take the whole session until it starts to feel like it works, because as a composition, this section on its own looks very odd without this section down here. So don't be disheartened when you've done that and you think, oh, it just doesn't look right. It's because often we need the whole bit in place to really kind of understand the context of it. So don't worry about that. I'm just kind of pre-warning people because it is something that happens. So I'm going to think about these colours. So sky colours, I'm going to get a lot of colours here ready on my palette anyway, because we've got all of these blues and things in here further down. So I might as well squirt out the same. So I'm going for, you could go for, if you've got a cerulean blue or like a turquoisey colour, I'm going to go for that. I'm going to go for a phthalo blue, or you may have something like cobalt or something, that's fine, or even Prussian blue you can try. Really, it's a great opportunity to experiment with all the blues and things that we've actually got to start with, so that's good. So then I'm going to go in with ultramarine. Yeah, so ultramarine, French ultramarine blue. Sometimes you get one that's a bit lighter. I mean, they're all different colours anyway. The extra one I'm adding, which you may not have, it's not, and don't worry if you haven't, but if you have, you can use it, is Payne's Grey. It's just, you can get the same effect just by adding a bit of kind of brown and a bit of blue anyway. I'm also going to add some purple, so I'm just going to bring it round on my palette. That's the only purple I've got at the moment. I haven't got another violet, so I'm going to use that one. Because this one's slightly warmer, just got a bit of touch more red in it than it has blue. So the violet ones are a bit cooler. They're a bit more maybe in keeping with that. And then I'm going to need the brown. So I'm going to start with that, then I'm going to add my warmer colours over here as I come to it. I'm going to leave it off the palette for now, just so it's not too confusing. And then the most important one with all of this is, well, not the most important, but we need it to help it work, is white. So I've got, let me see. So I'm going to think about this sky colour first of all. So I'm going to go in with some white, mix it up just a little bit at a time until I'm happy with the colour. I'm going to go in with some cerulean. I'm going to add a little bit of phthalo blue to that, but you can just use a bit of phthalo if you want to, because it'll give you a very kind of a nice, like kind of bright colour anyway. A nice turquoise kind of colour. So I'm going to go in with two slightly different tones. One that's kind of got a little bit more kind of blue to it, tone to it, and one that's kind of a little bit lighter. Now, I've gone in with a slightly different blue, just so that it is a contrast. but you can always take a little bit of the mix that you've done, the tint with white, and just make it lighter and you go in with that there. And I'll show you there's a little bit of kind of almost a tiny bit of cloud cover there. So I'm just going to test these colours with my small brush first. I'll test this one before I add any water to it, just to make sure it's the one I want. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah, happy with that also. So, you know, you can just add a little tiny bit. With blues and things, they're quite strong, the colours. So, it's just, you know, just add a little bit at a time, really, until you're happy. And then I'm just going to add some water to those, and enough water that that it's just going to glide, because we want it to go on really nice and easily. Just let it glide along. So I'm going to go in with the darker one first. What I'm going to do is mix them both up, and I want them to blend a little bit like last week's sky, so that we get these, you know, the kind of mist blend into it. So we don't want it too thin. We want it to cover your board really well. It's going to work fairly quickly. I think I've made that slightly thin actually. I'm just going to add a bit of white to that. I can always add a bit of blue to darken it up. So yeah, so if you go too thin, it goes more like watercolour, and it's difficult to move the paint into the other paint. Whereas if you've got it nice and thick, let's try again, that's better. Got it nice and thick. Now I'm bringing it down. I'm not worrying too much about going over those lines I've just drawn, because I want to bring it down far enough in case I change my mind as to the height that I've already got the mountains at. I might decide, you know, don't want to be quite as high or something like that. But I need to make sure that I've got plenty of this behind it. And I just kind of go side to side with that. And then I'm going to pop in this one that's slightly lighter now at this side while it's still wet. And I've got quite a bit of paint on here. So the two should blend quite nicely into each other. Just kind of like making it circular. But the other thing you can do, if you're not keen on having any kind of marks and you want it blended, and there's nothing wrong, by the way, of having the marks. I actually quite like that. But it's just personal choice. But you can always just get the edge of your finger, like that, and just soften those edges. Whilst it's still wet, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just pop in a little bit more of a light colour. So I may just put a tiny tint, so very small amount of colour in there. But again, I'm going in fairly thickly, so where I can see any cloud coming behind, I'm going to pop that in, build that up, and eventually I'll put in the very brightest of white. So I'd like that to kind of, so I've got my flat brush at the moment. I'm just going to use my finger edge to it, but if you don't like to use your finger, then you could actually just soften it with a nice soft brush, like a little mop brush like this, if you wanted to try that. So that will just softens it down, but you need plenty of paint on to do that, otherwise you'll just be kind of dabbing the bit. So that softens it right down, makes it a bit more fluffy. I'm just quite as happy with doing this with my finger as I am anything else, because that it's just exactly, it gives you a very, very similar cloud-like feel. Add a little bit more white now to the very brightest bits in that sky, so it really does feel a bit there as well. It really does feel like there you go, and that's why I'm just softening that down a little bit now. I don't want to take all the white out, I want to keep the white there, but I'm just going to soften the edge of it just with a really easily. Some artists do their whole cloud work just with a finger. There we go. So now I feel like I'm picking up some of the tones on that sky, and then I'm going to leave that as it is. Oh, there's a tiny bit actually at this corner now I'm looking. Just a little bit in there. And just kind of move, just dab it again. I'll just have a little bit over here because I'm feeling a bit lighter. There we go, and that's all I'm going to do to my sky. With the skies as well, if you've got some distance from it, you won't be able to see any marks anyway. So remember, these are to be admired really a couple of meters, 2 or 3 meters away anyway on a wall. So because when you use a lot of texture, it can feel quite intense. But as soon as you move your painting away from you, you won't get that. So don't let that bit overwhelm you, because it'll be fine. So I'm now looking at some of the tones in here, which is very cool. And I've got to decide, what do I put in first? Do I put in, what colours? We've got the shadows, we've got these other tones. So I'm going to just find what I call a mid-tone, something that's a little bit, not the lightest, not the darkest, kind of in the middle somewhere. So I'm just going to go for a blue base tone because I can actually add colours to it anyway. It's really not a problem. So I'm probably going to try this time a bit of ultramarine, tends to give us a bit of a darker blue, a little bit of white still. It's quite, it's not really intense, is it? And I'm quite happy with this kind of a tone to start with, and then I can add all the other colours that I can see in there. Maybe I'll pop just a little bit more white in. Make sure I've got enough mixed up. That's the other thing, because we're doing all of these rock faces. Doing all this one, so I need to add more. Just test that colour just to be sure. Yeah, that's fine. That's where I'm going to go with it. So I'll add some more of that and some more of that until I got to where I want to. You can add pops of brighter colours as we go. We're just looking for a base in which we can work on some of these a little bit more. I may even just put a tiny touch of this other blue in here. You can always add, if you've not only got kind of one blue, you can always add just a touch more green to one of your greens to it, to some of the blue, and see what, and then some white, and see what that gives you. Because you can get then some other kind of types of blue with that. Right, so same again, I'm going to need to just add a bit of water. I'm not going to add too much, just enough to get it kind of moving. Now you can go in, if you've got like an A4 or bigger, you can go in and start to actually use the texture on that and start to create the shape. These tend to be, this one seems like it's, the shape of it is kind of coming across, doesn't it? Across like this. Some of it's down as well. So we've got some coming across and some coming down. So you can start to almost put the texture in if you want with your brush, if you want to. I'm working quite small, so I'm having to pop it in just in a slightly different way so that I can fit my brush in actually. So I'm still kind of giving it, where it's a bit lighter at the bottom, where there's a lot more snow, I'm just going to add a slightly lighter tint, just so it's not going to be too difficult. You can kind of have them coming into each other anyway. We've got to put the dark shadows in. If you haven't got your palette knife, that's fine. And you don't want to have a go with a card or anything like that, because you could use a credit card cut up into two. Then just start to kind of pop on, just put it on with your brush and just make these directional strokes. That's quite good fun. Pull some down, pull them across. Because if we go in, especially if you're using a thicker paint, you can move the paint around, which is lovely. Just kind of getting in whereabouts it seems to be going. Again, it's not going to look much like anything at this stage. We're just getting the groundwork in place with a few different tones. So you can do one of a couple of things. You can go in and put the whole mountain range in if you want, or you can kind of then start to work in some of these lighter and darker ones. I'm just going to kind of make my way across the next two. I'm going to drop a little bit of lilac into some of these, into this, just because I want it to feel like it's going away. And these two certainly into the distance a bit. So if I add a little bit of a purple in, you know, it's in just a slightly different tone, but it's still cool. Or you could try brown if you wanted to. I just need some base. Creating that base for, so we can pop everything on. So underneath where this light cloud is, I'm just going to add a really light tint of the same colour, so that when I kind of put the cloud over the top, we can make it a little bit translucent. It's not quite such a change. I'm just going to continue to put that in. Okie dokie. So yeah, so we'll just keep kind of popping in, you know, some of these colours. I may even go just slightly darker with the next one. Maybe add a little bit of brown in there. We can do that. No, it's still got a similar tone to it, but I'm just kind of trying to, you know, create just a little bit of difference and try so that we get that sense of perspective in there. And again, as I said, it's only a base colour, so not a problem. So let's just get some kind of a shape in there. Still got to put the shadows in and things between them. We are going to end up with a bit of, almost a bit of a patchwork quilt with them, but that is okay, because again, we've just got to try and make, we're just trying to make you know, like a base really for it. So I'm just going to add a little bit of white to that. And again, that's got, it's quite cloudy under there, a bit cloud under, so I'm going to just bring that colour in, and then when we pop over a bit of mist, then that will work nicely as well. It won't be too dark. Well, you can do it over a dark one, it just makes it slightly easier. And then we have this other one. So this one's quite in the shade there, so I'd be inclined to do, you know, a bit of dark brown in there. And I'm using, you could also, I've been using like burnt umber, but you could use this Payne's Grey, which I'm going to add, I don't know. This is one of those things where we normally say don't make your colours muddy by mixing them too much, but actually the colours are quite dark on here, so it's not too a problem. Let's see. So I've got a bit of Payne's Grey in there now, just so we've got, again, that's a darker colour. And this one's starting to be a bit more in the light, isn't it, up here? So, you know, I may go back to my lilac one there. Maybe you can go back to your blue top. This one base. We're just looking at any colours that we, you know, kind of colour combinations we could use that would work really nicely. Bringing those down, bringing them down again. And then again, we've got these kind of like light areas that are in the misty. You know, this isn't going to look, this won't be how it looks finally, so don't worry. I'm going to go in with a bit of a mixture again. Getting quite bright in there actually, isn't it? This mist down here is not quite as bright. But as we go along, the next little bit is getting lighter. So we may even go back to a bit of that sky colour in there for the mist. But underneath the mist, should I say. Yeah, where it's lighter and brighter over this side, just like that bit of sky that's lighter and brighter. Okay. And then, so, we can come over to here and then we've got this real change over this side where it's kind of much brighter. So again, you may choose like a yellowy colour. You might, like for the top anyway, I'm going to think of a base colour. I'm going to go at the bottom of the mountains to show how dense they are and how the massive depth of them. I'm going to go in with a darker base here. But then, oops, mm, and to just keep this on. So we've got this very dark base, and then I'm going to go in and start getting a little bit lighter in here. So you could even use, like a bit of a burnt sienna or like a warmer tone, or you could go with something like pink. So I'm going to add red to my mix here. Make a pink, or you may have like a pinky colour, but whichever you choose, have a little play with some of these tones in the middle here. They are just middle tones as well, so I can add some other ones to it. But I might have, say, a bit of white, a bit of purple. And again, I'm making a tint up with these. And a bit of red, just so that you've got like almost a pinky tinge in there. Or you could just go straight in with just a pinky colour. Or you could go in with, if you're seeing like a brown or an orange, go in with that. I'm just looking for something as a base, really. The top layers and everything are different colours. So let's see. So let's get that in. I'm even going to paint at mountain tops. So I'll just paint over those in a brighter colour when I'm ready. I just need some medium tone to pop in there. And it's fascinating, isn't it? Because at first we think it's like just a snowy mountain top, but then when we look at all of the tones because of the conditions and where the sun is, it totally changes it again. So I've got this one here. So start to kind of get some of these colours, into play now. And we've also got mist coming over the top, which I'll deal with, that'll be the kind of the last thing. So we've now got like cool, 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 further back, coming into the light, a bit of dark at the bottom. So we now want to kind of work into these a little bit as well. I think I'm going to do these mountains first before I kind of put this screen over the top with all these kind of pebbles and everything. So this is what I was saying, wasn't I, about maybe bringing a little bit of some texture in. So what we can do, if you're wanting to try kind of using this, then I'm going to go in with my dark first. So depending on what colour dark it is, whether it's a browny colour or whatever, or whether you want to actually, make a bit of a tint up, so you might not want it really dark to start with. And this will be, again, dependent on, if you want a really, how much of a difference you want with this. Sometimes people like a big contrast from colours really dark, and other times if you're going for kind of a pastely palette and you're really enjoying that, then just add a bit of white just to kind of make that colour a bit less intense. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the very end of my palette knife here. And load up, so there's plenty of paint on there. And then we're just kind of playing with some of those shapes. So I'm almost scratching down. So I want to get this, some of the edges of these in. I need more paint on. And what I'm doing is I'm just pulling them down like we can see like that these there, these ends. And I can go in and like neaten some of the edges up, but we're just kind of trying to create some of the shapes of those rocks. So I've just picked up a load of this, so you can just watch, you don't pick up all the paints on you on the bottom of it. So try again, there we go. So I'm just finding the darker ones, and then I'm just going to just, it's like dragging it, you're just dragging it really. And it looks pretty awful close up, but then when we look at it from afar, it does look quite effective. You can use the edge as well. You can use the edge of your palette knife. I'm going to have to move my box out, though, if you've got anything in the way. It'll move, the camera will get stuck. So if you've got anything kind of to the right side, if you're right-handed, I'd just move that out of the way. I'm going to drag it that way as well. I'm just dragging it down. So I just want to get this texture in. Now that'll look more intense until we soften that little bit, because we've got to put the other colours over the top as well. So I'm just going to put a little bit more where I can see the dark one. And because we're putting it on thickly, it's not going to kind of, the colours aren't going to run into each other because they're on nice and thick. I'm just moving that off there, and then I'll paint over that in a minute. And then wherever else I can see. So there's like another ledge here. I'm just going to try and create that ledge shape. Uh, but really, the whole point of this session, one of the points of the session, is to really kind of explore texture and how we can create the feel of a Rocky Mountain in Canada. I'm not looking for a complete match of a photograph. We just want that rock face in there. So there we go. So if there's anything else you want to pop in there, like I'm going to go in and I want to go in with a darker one. I just want to make sure I'm kind of getting the edge of the shadow there between the mountain range. So I want to just go in and just add a little bit with my brush as well. You know, you can do a whole painting with your palette knife, or you can chop and change. So I'm just breaking that up so it's not too harsh. I'm just going in with a little bit of a darker just to make sure I feel that we've got like the real feel of those ledges and everything. There's a bit here. Too small for me to get with a palette knife. So I'm just going to break that up a bit, but then that gets the depth of the mountain in there as well. So we'll see, you know, how deep this side is. It might even be some trees, but I'm not quite sure. It's so dark. I might just break that bit up later, but I'm just going to pop that in there. And then it's just thinking about how to go over with the other colours now. So I'm going to do the same again. So what I might do is just pop some of these other dark colours onto the other side of the mountain ledge as well. It's a little bit more. Not quite as intense on that one. Or you may even go in with a different, you know, slightly different colour. So again, I'm just creating some of those downward motions there. Bits in there. But when you're using a palette knife, it really is just about exploring how to use that tool, or even a bit, an old credit card or something that's kind of cut up with a corner on it. So you can use the point, but just exploring the textures more than anything. And it does lend itself well, the mountaintop ranges and everything. You can think of Bob Ross and all of those kinds of paintings are very similar kind of terrains, aren't they? So I'll just pop those in. Working my way along and that, just pulling. If I can see a shape going one way, that's just the darker ones, I'm just pulling it into that shape downwards or across, whichever way I think it goes. I was trying to recreate that shape. And I might actually bring in some slightly different shadowy colours in here. So I'm going to add a turquoisey colour to that. Tiny bit of a browny colour. I've got some warmth in it, hasn't it? And then a little tiny bit of white. And let's see. So you pull that down as well. Some of it feels like it's going that way. Some of it feels like it's going down. But you can do this equally just using your brush and just kind of creating the shapes, as I said, that you can see with your paintbrush as well. Some are going across, some are going down. And cross over, don't they? Right, so I'm going to stop with that now for the darks, and then we can overlay now, like looking at each area, what other colours can you see in there? Can you see some pinks or lilacs? Can you see some blues? Can you see that very final one is the lightest? So if you can see any other colours, I'm going to go in with a bit of this sky colour on there, on here. So I'm just where I can see it, not everywhere. Just moving it up and down. And again, it's just kind of having a play with how much to put on the palette knife, so you can get those little movements. Sometimes you just want it on the tip just so that you can kind of work into it a bit more. And sometimes you can pop it all the way, a bit further across, so you get a long bit there. Or you might just have a bright colour. It might be just like a little bit of a turquoisey colour or something, or a blue, or just have a play with some of those blues even, and think, okay, what other tones have I got in here? Or, because actually a pop of colour can work quite well too. Pop some blue in there. So just go in with the colours that you can see. See if it kind of changes the feel or whatever. And then I'd be thinking just about finishing off with, your very lightest area of the rock face. So again, it's not going to feel like anything particular at the moment. It'll be when we've got those trees in that it will feel more rock-like. So I'm going the very lightest. And like, is there any white on here? Well, I'm not sure I can see any real pops of white, or there might be just a tiny, like the odd bit. It's just where it's kind of, you get something poking through the tree. So I'm literally only going to do with the bits that are highlighted that I can see. And then, it'll work better. So yeah, just have a look at what we can see. Mm. You can go across all of those rock face like that. What other colours can we put in there? Now I am going to go a bit more pinky in there. Mix up some more. Just experiment, kind of scraping the shapes down. What other colours can we see in there, Remember to go in with, if you want to add colour, go in with those mid-tone colours first before you put any highlights on. And really, I think it's just kind of not not thinking too much about it, just kind of having a go at just exploring some marks and some movement. I'm just going to pop in some of the highlights now that I'm seeing over these three, where it's definitely this one that's starting to get a bit lighter with that cloud behind it. I'll just pop a couple of marks in there. Now, this is a little bit more to do with the kind of foggy bits that are down the bottom. What else have we got in here? So this is not too bright, it's more turquoisey. So, you go with a nice kind of valery kind of a blue, or even an ultramarine mixed with blue, but white, sorry, a tint of ultramarine blue. Whichever colour you've got, and you can have a go at mixing with and see what colour it gives you. As long as you've got a contrast, that's the main thing between the background colour and the lighter one. Well, you won't see that. Okay. So we've also got going on here these kind of misty areas. So what you want to do is just kind of hang on a little bit until the under bits are dry, so that you're not kind of like getting that kind of caught up in it as well. But maybe the bottom bits down here we could do something with because they've already kind of dried underneath with the rough on the top. So I would just, pop it on nice and thickly and just move it around with your finger so it feels like mist covering the bottom of the mountains. That's it really, it's not too difficult. You'd make it really soft that way. Or again, you could try your little mop brush. I'm now going to go over the bottoms of these where this mist is. Just explore the different kinds of colours of mist you think you've got. Again, just tap it down. Up and down. Oops, that's really that one. soften down that over the bottom of the mountain. It really kind of works. And then when it's dry down here, it's much lighter, isn't it? So you can do this with your brush, by the way, don't have to pop it on with a palette knife. So we've got all of these little areas of cloud coming up, and again, got plenty on, and it's really easy. Easy. Just to kind of move it whilst you've got plenty there. And we'll go over some of that to kind of make it, a little bit less a little bit brighter in some areas. So there's a bit like where it's particularly bright. Again, we're just tipping the ones that are particularly bright there. And then when you kind of like getting to a point where you're more dry up here, we can put the other mist on. But I think I'm going to come back and do that maybe nearer the end. I might just pop this nice bright bit under here. And I think I would probably have a bit of yellow to do that. So that's what I'm seeing at the top there. And whatever you see, you use. I'm going to just do this with my brush now. But nice and again, you might need a change of water because it might be a bit too bluey at the moment. I'm just going to paint on a nice pop of yellow on there. And then once we get that kind of light, kind of foggy cloud over the top as well, that will give us much more of a sense that this is in the light over here. With that misty going over, which we can't really do at the minute, otherwise it'll get all muddy with the other colours. That's a start for us. It's something we can do to start to kind of get that ball rolling. So again, at the moment, we're very out of contact text here, but it'll be fine in a mo. I'll come back to that. We'll just take a pause there, I think, before we put this screen in and we start to kind of, then we'll get more of a sense of what's happening with everything around it. And see how you're getting on there. Okay, so let's have a little look at how we can start to kind of get the context with this as well now. It may even be if you've had a little pause, let's see, no, it's still very wet is mine. So say you might be onto your mist, but I'm going to have to hang on because I've got my paint on really quite thick there. You can kind of scrape on quite a lot of paint, so that bit take a bit more to dry. So I'm just going to have a little look at, getting these little in between bits. So this kind of scree area where we've got almost like greys and pinks in there. That's what I'm seeing anyway. And of course, by all means, you pop in what you can see. That's the beauty of it, isn't it? And with regards to texture, you just do it how you want. So, I'm not going to use my palette knife for this. I'm just going to kind of dot in. I may even use a little bit of grey actually. It's looking a slight different colour at night on the camera than it is, but it can do it other times of the day. So I'm going to just kind of go in with a little bit of grey, a little bit of blue, intermittently. You can put one colour down first if you prefer. Now obviously this all goes right behind the trees normally, so we can't really see what's going on. But I have got a mixture, some blues. Just going to go in. Bring a few of these little brighter ones in there, just because I like that, really. There's not much more reason to it. Sometimes we can just pop in exactly what we fancy. I'm just going to bring in a few highlights through there as well. I might bring in a few shadier areas in there as well. Again, it's just deciding, how dark you want those shadier areas. It's up to you, really. I Thing is, if you put a darker one in and you're not sure, you can always just take it out again. I'm going to go in with a nice dark shadow down here just to separate this out, show that there's something behind this on both sides. You can, yeah, as I said, so you can always just go over it, soften it down. As long as I can feel like I can see a really bright area here. And then popping these tones here. But again, this is all going to kind of disappear into the background as well at some point. So um, what we do is get very involved and invested in the bit that we're doing, and then it's like actually we do. Sometimes we don't need to be as invested, but you don't know till you go through the process. Yeah, you know, the dark ones in. So if you've got any, if you want to kind of tidy up any areas, or you've got like you're thinking about trying to get some of these, shadows in, so you can see where the edge of the lake, or you can see between where the edge between the between each of the mountains is, then by all means just have a little look at where those shadows are between them, and that will help as well create that kind of depth between them, because we know that those dark colours do recede. The other thing you can do is also, if you've got one edge of a mountain there, sometimes you get a little highlight on the other side of it. Well, that can help as well, just get a bit of a sense of perspective and look at these, how the vast depth of them. It's enormous, aren't they? Right, so just going to have a little look at looking at this bank of trees over here and these trees here, and how we can kind of go about that as well. Mhm. So, we've got these banks, haven't we, over here with like the trees and everything. So again, you can just have a little think about what colour you want to use. Now I've only got one green, and that just, actually you can do all sorts with the green. If you've got a darker green, you can be putting the shadows in. But we can do a lot with one green. We can actually mix up very blue-green colours. We can mix with dark green by adding a bit of brown to it. I'm just going to bring a tissue. So I'm just going to use my palette knife only to mix now. So I get a bit of this green. So what I want to do, I want to think about these very much darker green, blue, the kind of bluey green ones there. I'm going to go in with the brown as well, just to get the very dark green to use in the base. It's still quite warm at the moment, is that? So with that blue-green, the darker area, I'm going to actually go in with an ultramarine blue as well, which is just kind of a very typical colour, isn't it? Just to kind of get a nice base before I make a blue-green. Just use that for a moment. So go in. Just really, this is kind of like the shadows are mostly at the bottom. So we have, just going to kind of get something that start to kind of create some kind of tree shape that looks wider at the bottom and shorter at the top. Stack them up. You can just dab it on really. Just going to make this, as long as you can tell that there's, the eye kind of makes up the rest really. And I've said this before, but it does. So once we put the trees in the foreground, these will be much more recognisable as trees as well behind it. So I'm just going to go along with what I think I can see there, just kind of dolloping on. And then we'll get really small near the bottom, don't we? Look, really small. More spaced out as well. So this is just a mixture of like a sap green, like a mid-tone green, and then brown and a bit of blue to make that really dark shadow. And then I'm going to pop some pops of colour on top of them as well, just to kind of get some other light colour coming through. Go in with some blueberries and some green. And mix a bit of blue in there, a bit more blue. It's really quite dark, isn't it, over there? And cool. So the cool blue-green shade we can see is because we've got those shadows cast, which is much cooler. Looks maybe across my brush. A little bit more green back into as well. I'm just going to go in with this blue-green shade. Just kind of overlay that. It's just really subtle, so there's not a lot of it. It's just enough to give just a little pop of colour in there. Okay. If you want me to add any other pops in the colour, then just by all means, just pop it in. break it up slightly with a little bit of I've just got a bit of blue and white in there just to kind of break up if it's got too much, if you've got too much foliage in there. And then I'm just going to put some colours between this stack of trees here. So we've almost got this bluey base, I think I've got a bit purple. More of the purpley browny colour. Put grey as well within there. Which is just, again, it's just this interesting colour that goes between. Between I might actually just do it, but then it looks quite bluey based there. So we're just paying attention all the time, aren't we, really? To some of these tones to look at, what is actually going on here. All just reflected and reflects the edge of the light down there. The colour. And then we can pop in the other lines of trees and things that we can see as well. Different colours in there. Mm. Yeah, so we do this with like lots of them. It just kind of puts context in, doesn't it? And then we're looking at we've got all these patches, all these trees up here, all around there as well. It's a bit more lit over here, so I would think it's not quite as cool and dark. It's just slightly bluer and greener over there, isn't it? But again, we've got all these different tones. So I'm going to go in with more blue at the back, but breaking that up with the green. Let's see. I'm really going to drop a bit of Payne's grey blue in there. So I can't see the mixing. And then I'm just going to literally just go in and just kind of just drop it in. Just going to bring in a little bit more green into this mix. And really, at that back bit, we don't want kind of too much detail anyway, because it's so far back. We don't want it popping those trees forward, but it's enough that we know just kind of like that there's some kind of tree top going on. So you can just put some little pointy bits on with your brush. And then obviously as we're making our way forwards, they're getting really quite, some of those colours in there, the highlights are really quite turquoisey. So I'm going to go in like that. Put some of these kind of light bluey, turquoisey, you can, as I said before, you can add more green and then a bit of like light colour to that to get that bluey colour. Try a cobalt blue or phthalo blue with some white. So I'm just going in now, just breaking that up and making these ones at the front tall. But again, you still can't see a massive shape there that I'm doing. Just a suggestion that there is a shape, some shapes. You can see some that look a bit more tree-like, so we get them a bit pointy at the top. Then our brain works out the rest of them pretty much. And then I'm going to pop in, the contrasting dark bluey greeny in there. Shadows at the bottom. Yeah. Hi, I'm going to go with a little highlight now so it feels a bit more tree-ish. So I've got like just lots of lines in there at the minute, literally. Just look like lines. I'm going to pop in a little bit of a tint with some blue, quite light. And then where we can see, just kind of like put it down the edge of, as though it's going down one of the sides of the trees. Makes it a bit more highlighted and feel a bit more tree-like then. And put it on both the sides of the trees. If you're finding that you're kind of getting rid of all of the shapes of the trees, and you can just pop a little line back down. With majestics there. And as I said, when we put the trees in the foreground, our mind kind of works that bit out for us anyway, and that's what's going on. And then just going to get this little bit of the edge of the lake here, because there's almost like a sandy bank, isn't there? I'm just going to go in with lilac and a bit of white there. Swings out, doesn't it? It's just so we can get the edge of it, and then we'll be able to get the edge of and we can get like the shadow underneath that. So we're looking all the way across now, where is there any more of these kind of sandy edges that we need to get there? There's a few. And we start looking. Look, you've got these little highlighted, little areas that are a bit highlighted on the edge of the bank there that catch in the edge of the light. And the answer is probably yes. So we'll pop them in. Yeah. And even there's a bit of sandy bank. Just under there. Just a little bit. Pop them in. Very small amount there. And then we can we're starting to then create some of this edge for the water, basically. Because underneath any kind of bank, you always get a shadow. And under here, it's much more obvious. It's a bit more subtle there. I'm going to go in with a nice dark colour. So you could use, you can use any, you can even use the same dark green that you've used if you want to underneath there, or you can use, go in with a bit of brown and a bit of blue or a bit of brown green, whichever colour. You just need a nice dark one so that it shows that that's the water's edge there. So I'm going around, just getting patches at a time. Sometimes they're more shady in one area. You don't always get a full block round. And a lot of it's going to be covered over anyway over this tree, so we've just got to kind of just do best fit. And then come here, and then a shadow here. So we'll just keep looking at where the shadows are. You can break them up. So it doesn't feel like one continuous line, because naturally it would break where you've got things. And sometimes, when it's in full light, you don't see them as much. So it starts to then create a little bit more, make a bit more sense to us really, I think, here. And then we're just going to concentrate then on these really interesting kind of shapes that we get here. So we really ought to think about the blues. I'm going to have to get another palette. We're running out of space. Just bear with me. So what we need is looking at just the different shades in there. So I'm going to go in with the ones that are shadiest first. Let's see. So I've got the very darkest ones, but I'm going to go for the next shadowy ones. So I'm going to go in with, I can actually do that in one look. I'm going to go in with ultramarine blue, just typical ultramarine blue. Maybe put a tiny bit of, just a little tiny bit of white in it, just to make it slightly less intense. But I want a fairly bright. It doesn't have to be. And then I'm just going to follow the shapes it kind of makes there in the water. They do literally, make these shapes in the water, don't they? So, oh, that's a bit more. Just copying the shapes it's making. And behind it, there's kind of more turquoisey in that one. So I'm going to make that a mixture of two, whilst it's damp at the edges. I'll just pop that in there. And that colour comes around here. So I'm just following, so we're just following these patterns so that we can see. And then it feels like we've got a combination of these colours here, a bit brighter now on the edge. This is where you start to think, oh no, it doesn't look here, but it'll be fine. And obviously we've got lots of trees there in the way anyway, so we can't really see. I just want some colour to come behind that. And almost behind there, I'm feeling it's a bit of this turquoisey colour again. But also there could be a bit of a tint of a purpley in there, so I'm just going to mix up that. And that's only around, kind of around this area here. I'm adding a bit more purple to that because that's the tint I feel I can see. So I'm going in with that. Maybe a tiny bit more white in the mix. Because we put all of the darks in, then we can pop in kind of some of those mid-tones and then any light colours over the top. Now, if you're doing this here, and I know this is a lot, this is going to be covered over anyway, but if you're doing this and you think, you know, there is, it feels as though it's a bit softer, you know, around some of these edges, then again, just get your finger, just very gently, just soften the colours together. There is definitely lots of shapes in here though, so I mean, I would just keep, you know, you don't need to soften every bit. It's just where it feels a bit more like it's a bit more misty came down this one maybe. And those colours are kind of going into one another. And then we've got the reflection of those mountains as well underneath there. And then we've got all of these other colours going over, haven't we? So I'm looking there. This is the light one that comes over the top. So I might just get these similar tone to what I've used already here. I'm just going to add a touch of that purple again. And I'm going to put a touch of white in there. There's the purple. And I'm trying to just get the shapes of these mountains that are going underneath here. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're just kind of getting to grips with what reflections feel like in a big lake like this. So just explore that today. A lot of it's going to go underneath this tree, to be fair. But we can pop it where we think it's going to go, look. So that's going to go under there. And then the same again. The next mountain coming this way. And then we're going to have some light colours over the top of that. So just keep going. And I'm going to put the other mountain there and move across. It's the light colours when we add those that starts to change what we think is going on. So I'm going to kind of pop some dots here of almost like kind of reflection. A bit broken up though. And then all down here, it feels a bit more dark. So I'm going to go in with a slightly bright, slightly different blue here, because that's what I'm seeing. And you can see like almost a tree line, but you can just kind of like pull the colours up with your brush, just kind of wiggle it. So we're getting the general bits, aren't we, in there? So I'm going to use this other tone of blue just to kind of pop in any shadowy bits I can see, but not too much detail because we want it to kind of be more, you know, kind of water, like blended in, if that makes sense. And then we want to underneath, so these little bits that are coming out, which are kind of reflections of the foggy areas, we'll pop that in. But first of all, we're going to put in the other reflection, which is this lighter bit underneath. So we've got these areas of cloud, haven't we? But we almost need, maybe actually we're going to have to put the rest of this lake in first. So let's see what colours we've got here. Yeah, okay, so again, I'm going to go in a bit of purple in there, because otherwise we won't see the light. So I'm going to go in with another colour here, another shade that I think I'm going to use, slightly purpley again. And we end up with a bit of a patchwork, but that's fine. A bit more blue there. Don't get too caught up on this water because as long as you can get some shapes and some of the different tones. I'm going to go back to my turquoisey colour one here that I've got and start to bring that in between because that's reflecting the sky in there. This nice turquoisey one. Turquoisey blue, it's kind of a combination between the two, isn't it? And that one's all the way around here. Wintery. Just join them up together and then we'll put in those light coloured lines then. If it's not blending, just blend the edge together like with your finger or with your little brush. So we've got that. So the only thing that separates that is these lighter areas in here. So clouds. So first of all, we need to pop in what, that kind of reflection there that's going on behind there. So it's reflecting the clouds in behind the mountains in the actual lake. Got those here going on as well. We've got that one over here. So you can start to see that when you're looking at them all as a whole. Quite bright, that one over there. That's probably one of the pops of lights in the lake. Might even put a pop of yellow in there as well. It feels a bit yellow. And then see if there's anything else. And then what we'll be looking at is anything that comes across. So that watery one here is all over the top. So we can just put a thinner layer over the top like that. It kind of comes in, it's reflected over the top of everything. And then some of that cloud as well is reflected over, all the way over this way. That helps us to know it's a bit more watery, that there's water in, because we've got reflections going both ways. And there's a little bit there. There's a couple of really light pops here, look. Yeah, and that's as much as I'm going to pop on that lake. I'm just going to go in now and actually start to get the rest of it, because this is where it really starts to change. So I'm going to go just pop some nice kind of colours in here. So I'm going to go in a bit more pinky purple and put a bit of red in there to make it a bit more pink. Put some white in. And I'm going to get a little bit of blue in there as well. And I'm going to start to I've been working the rocks over the top of there. So this bit actually doesn't take quite as long at all. Just put the base colour down. So the trees will totally transform it. See, I've got some rocks jutting out and things, but I'll do those. I'll do those when I've got the trees in, because they overlap that. This is just to get a base so that you can stand the trees up on the edge of here. So obviously we can see all the jutting out rocks and things, but I'm going to just get the trees in and then I'm going to work around and put those rocks, overlapping. So when we start putting these trees in, so what we need to be thinking about is, placing these trees and thinking about the colours of them. So I've just got, as I said, I've just got my sap green here. Now sometimes there are some real pops of colour in there, almost turquoisey, some of them. But again, we can use some of the blues and things to kind of get a bit of a darker colour. So we've got the shadows as well. So I'm just looking at the stem, like the tree trunks. They're catching the light a little bit. They feel to me a bit bluey green. So I'm just going to mix up what I think I can see. Feel a bit lighter at the middle. And then I'm going to start to kind of place where they're going to go. That one's quite tall. So about here. Let's move a nice thin brush, like the tip of a brush, and get that in. Take it all the way up. Once the trees start to go in, you just think, oh yes, I see it, I see. Really see what's going on now. And I'm not worrying too much. Another tree trunk now. I'm just getting the tree trunks lined up first. Another smaller tree there. Opens over everything. And here. And another one side of it there. And here, which is stops in the lake, so it's not going away. It's not as tall as the other one. So we got one. I mean, you can put as many in or as few as you want to. That's the other thing. This one over here, which kind of goes over the top, which is quite nice. Doesn't matter if it means an inch or half or whatever. Anyway. And actually, you can leave them out, put them in, place them where you want. And there's another few here, smaller ones. Mm. 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 Let's see, I don't want to put that in the last one. And then we're just going to use, so I'm going to get the shadow in first. So I'm just going to get a bit of brown as well in there. And just make a nice dark, I'll mix plenty up, a nice dark colour with some greens, a bit of brown, and some ultramarine, so that we've got the real kind of bluey green, darker shadowy one as well. So I'll probably put a bit more blue in than I will brown. So I've got that nice shadow. Get those on first. And you can just kind of go, just kind of flick them up, just go side to side with the foliage until you've got something that by the time you've kind of gone up the stem and you've made it, narrower as you've gone up, something that feels and resembles a little bit that tree-like. And you can explore with a fan brush as well. That's the other thing you can do. So I've gone in with my shadow first. I'm going to do that for all of them, and then I'm going to add up the put the other kinds of foliage on. So this is the front one. So you can look at the shapes. There's some going at the front here, some kind of coming out. But again, we can put those in with the other colours. we're just kind of trying to get, at this point, just something that looks like the foliage. And it's really fun experimenting with the kinds of movements you need to make with your brush to create this foliage. It's quite enjoyable actually, you know, like missing a little bit of a gap, putting one in. Just, you know, where do I put the cut? Where do I put it? And we just kind of, you know, just going up the tree. You know, how thin do I make them? How thick do I press? You know, do I press a bit harder to kind of create more of an impact? Looking at the, you know, the width at the bottom, all those things. And just keep working through all of those trees that you can see. Doing the same thing. Right, you know, as you go, you'll start kind of getting quite loose with it because you get into a flow with them. You know, I'm quite very loose really with these. And then we put these in front. But some of them might not have as much foliage on. And then there they are. Obviously the tops are getting lost in everything else at the minute, but they won't once I put the other colours on. You know, you can try fan brush as well. Just swooping. Okay, so you can see the edge now of that lake is already starting to transform. Just keep going. It's not, doesn't take too long at all once you're in the swing. They're slightly brighter over this side, aren't they? Because again, we're going into the yeah, just play with making those lovely shapes. Really good fun. Before you know it, you're kind of just working your way through, and it's in no time at all. You've done a whole line of trees without even thinking about it. Mm. Mm. Really bushy again. Right, doing some up the middle as well, just side to side. So we want to make our trees a bit more 3D now. We've just got a dark one on it. So what we'll be thinking about now is adding some colour. So whether it's your green that you're going in with, or if it feels a bit more blue toned, then go in with that. So the ones at the front are the ones that have got the most, I'd say, the most detail on them, the big ones. So we kind of just dot in some foliage, other foliage colours along the way of the tree. Now, not in exactly the same place, but you can put some in the middle, some at the side. It just kind of puts that mid-tone onto it, thickens out that foliage a little bit. Same with this one here. I've probably got more green on it, it's a bit lighter. And you can even go in with like, put a bit of a tint in as well. So you've got like or a yellowy green on this one because it is brighter. Got more sunlight on it. Just thickens that foliage right up. So we're not just got one. So I'm just gonna get the yellow. I can add, you can add lots of yellow in there. Or we can just put a white with the green, make a bit of a tint up. So I'm dabbing on any little highlights that will make that tree, the bits that we wanted to just kind of be a little bit more in the light, or that are catching some kind of light somewhere. And just work your way across the other trees. Some might be just very, very dark. Some might have, like over this side, it might not have any light highlights. It might just be a few green bits that where it's catching a little bit of the light. And then you may have even some pops of blue, which is what I was seeing when I first did this. So this here, I've gone in with a bit of a, like turquoisey blue. It's what I'm seeing. It's like this blue. And put some on the front here, so you often get like the thick ones on the front. I'm just going to weave through just occasionally some of these blue tones that I seem to be seeing. As I said, some of them may not catch any of the light at all. Might be quite dark. That's fine. That is quite bright. But this side, it might be much brighter. Or just a hint of bright, or you may even get some blue tones here, depending on what's coming through the back. Or well, that's what the experimental bit is. It's just like looking at all the colours that you can see and experimenting with your own style with that. And sometimes you lose this, you might lose the framework of the tree, and you can start popping that back in a bit. Just drag a dark colour or a light colour, whichever one you're choosing to do, through a bit, but just break it up. Don't put it kind of just straight through, otherwise it defeats the purpose really, because it'll break that tree back up too much and it'll look a little bit false. But you can pop a bit of certainly where the base of the tree is, where it's a bit thicker and darker, and it just kind of puts a little bit of shape back into it. And then really all you've got left to think about then is this little bit of foreground. So again, maybe pop in some rocks in. We've got some kind of grey blue rocks. I've got some grey. I've got some grey there. I'll just use that one. Just gonna add some blue to that. There we go. That will do. And I'm just going to start to place a few of those rocks in. It's probably going to be this one. Not that one. This one. And it won't be till we put, say, for example, the shadows underneath that we'll be able to see these rocks a little bit. So you almost need to work into the rocks just a tad. And you can, put some lighter ones and things, and then the shadows underneath. Any other little bits and pieces that you can see. There's another rock. That's one. This is like, obviously we're having to build these little bits up a bit, but again, we can just pop. And obviously this is just one side of it. We can start to put some lighter colours, some darker ones, so we can start to make these rocks pop up a bit 3D. When you get when you get a highlight on top of a rock and it creates a shape, just just create a pop of color. You might get some funny shapes in there as well. So we're just just explore what that looks like really. 'Cause it's all new, isn't it? All of these, every time you do a new topic, it's a new, oh, I didn't know a rock did that, or I didn't know, the edge of a lake did that, or whatever. So I want to get in the shadow. This is the last step really. So I want the shadow under those rocks. So we've got a bit of context on the side, and then we need the shadow where it drops down. Otherwise, we can't quite tell where the edge of the lake is at the moment. I'm just going to get the shadow under these different rocks first, in between, wherever they need to go. Right. Just by putting a little dot of shadow and things in there, will start to take shape a bit. So I'm going to just create the edge of this now, because you'll see, if you look closely, we do get where it drops off quite steeply. We get that big shadow underneath there. So again, just decide on what colour. I'm just going to go in. You can go in with any really. So I'm not going to do a really hard line all the way along the edge, but I do need, down at the base of all of those trees, we need to see that there is a big drop. It's tailing off there. So I'm just breaking it up a little bit basically and putting the shadow in. You can see it starts to emerge once you start to really look at it, but it's just sometimes you don't see it to start with. So it's definitely very dark under the bottom of these trees. So I'm going to darken off there where I've started. Maybe it's a bit thinner than that. But this makes such a difference. Make sure we've got that, showing that deep shadow where underneath all of those trees, so it also marks the edge. Between the rocks and the trees as well. Rocks. I just need to join them. Join this here. So the only other thing you need to kind of have a little look at when you're working on this is just to decide, like I have a little look back and see if there's anything like I haven't really put in this lovely foggy area. So I'm just going to do that now. So I'm just going to get a nice tint at that corner. So I've got some blue in here. So many shades, isn't there, of blue? It's really interesting when you start to do it. Let's get some of that light. And it was just to take it very tiny bit of it, just to take it over the top of the, with some of these mountain areas here, to kind of try and create this fog. So it needs to be a bit more blue than that actually, it's a bit dull. And drop a bit more of this blue in. So I'm just kind of just making circular motions with it. Now it's dry. You can thin it right down, or you can just kind of pop it on thickly enough on the top. And then again, just soften the edges down. Use just pad of your finger tip. And I'll just, there were some other areas like here and here. I wanted to pop it in as well. So just pop that in. And then, just keep looking. Is there anywhere else you want it? Like I wanted it over here. Because the rest of it's dry now. It's not going to smudge. Look up there and it's sitting. There's some sitting at the bottom as well. Pop that in. And then you can go, and if there's any that's lighter than that, if you thought, oh, well, actually, I could do with it being a bit lighter, then just add another layer. It's not very easy, just keep adding layers of it. But now I am going to just dot it about now. And where you get the kind of the lightest bit, you can focus, focus it doing that. And that's kind of like how we just get any sitting fog over the top. There's a little bit down there. I'm going to make that a bit brighter. Just like that now. So, that's another thing to think about, that we've just, just to twiddle in all these little bits and tips. And then again, you can do the same on the water. So if you think, oh, actually, one of those bits that I did the fog on doesn't feel quite light enough, but again, just build on it. You can always add a little bit more. I'm definitely softening it down then. And then we have one cool Canadian mountain range, a beautiful lake on it. Really like the table. You can see the difference. It makes quite a difference, doesn't it, when we do that? But there's so many things, lovely things to think about in there. And every time you do a similar kind of topic again, it's just so, each time it gets easier and easier, because you think, oh, right, I remember the fog, or I remember this bit or that bit. So yeah, so I hope you've enjoyed that, and you can always, as I said, lighten up anything, or if there's any other shadows. But it's a really good step into understanding more about wintry Canadian landscapes, and apply them to other ones that are similar as well in different regions. So I hope that's been really, really helpful, and enjoy.